Hello, hello, hello. This is a video for my friend Drew. I make this video for you because I've been thinking about the way you commented under my videos and the loyalty, the friendship, the friendliness, and the humbleness, and there's an energy of angelic energy, an angel energy, angel soul. That's what I think you are. You're an angel soul. And you are very humble with that. You don't show yourself much and you keep in the background and you're kind of quiet, you know. So I think I met you in a chat room. So, and I think that's very touching that you subscribe to my channel and that you saw something of value in my brain. And I very much appreciate that. That doesn't happen very often. So it feels good to find friends who are humble and who are serious and who are quiet and polite and introspective. Yeah. So I really appreciate that very, very much. The sun is shining into the greenhouse and kind of blinding me. I'm gonna put this further over here. I'll put this further over here. I want to show my artwork too, but the sun is shining, so I have to leave it like this right now. So I want to talk about, in this video, I want to talk a little bit about social dynamics and bring this awareness a little closer to people's brains, people in general, not Drew, but I think Drew is already very aware about a lot of things. So, but in general, to the public, yeah, bring things a little bit closer to awareness and hope that it will elevate people in their own awareness and introspection and clarity about themselves and about society in general, you know, and how people function. So, as I already talked about it in my former video, was the Xenobox. The Xenobox is actually a sandbox for children to play in. You know, it could be any size. You know, they usually come in modest sizes where, you know, the child leans into it. It's a box and it has sand on the bottom. The child leans into it with the elbows like this and sets up the scenario as a psychogram. You know, they have a bunch of little figurines, you know, little dolls, and they're dolls that the dolls from all walks of life, you know, a grandmother, grandfather, parents, children, toddlers, babies, animals, and so the child can then put all of this, set up a scenario and then say something about it, what is happening, or maybe do an interactive play between those. And in psychology, the psychologist is observing this very carefully and might ask a couple of questions in between and say, what do you mean? What do you mean by this? Why did you say this? Or to clarify a psychological, you know, where they see there's some kind of psychological hook or something. And to get a little bit deeper into it, it is all based kind of on psychoanalysis, and I happen to have done that as a child. I was in child play therapy from 5 or close to 6, from 5 to 8, a little over 2 years, and I feel very grateful that I had the chance to work with such an amazing mind. Yes, Anneliese, who later also became a very close friend of myself and my family. And I wrote about it in my book, and because a lot of people have been asking how that child is doing. The child, she gave her the name Betty, but my name is Nikki, Nicola. And so I thought this is an opportunity not just to talk, to communicate with others, but which I never got the chance to really be, certainly not through Anneliese, and that's another subject why, but to express, to do an inventory, to do a reflection on my life ever since then. So Anneliese, when I was a child, she was absolutely there for me, and there were no emotions there were obstacles between us. That happened later when I became an adult, because I began to trigger her very massively. And as anyone who is close to us can trigger us very massively when it hits right into a nerve, when it hits on a landmine, on an emotional landmine, on a trauma, that she herself had not been able to work out during her lifetime. She died in December 2016. She was very old. She was 96. And she was 96. So I keep confusing the number, but somewhere like this, somewhere 95 or 96. So that is very old. But she has been writing books all the way until the very end. She's written many books in the field of psychology. She's very famous. Her books are still all on the market, all of them, including the book about the child therapy that she wrote about my therapy process with her, called Betty, Protocol of Child Therapy. It's still in print in Germany, not any longer in the United States. I was in the process of translating it into much more clarity. So because the person who originally translated it into English does not know the exact things, so it's too difficult to understand all of these nuances about it. So that's why I decided I wanted to translate this and make that very understood, make that very clear what was going on, and also write something at the end of that child play therapy, and maybe even more, or add my own book to it, so make it much more volume, give it more volume. So the book is kind of like a pocket book, sort of, of, I don't know, 100 or 200 pages, the protocol, and my own book is another 100 or 200 pages, and so that's not too big. I mean, I can add this and on the back, so I have like part 1, part 2. So I was thinking about doing this, but with today's marketplace, it's probably also not gonna catch any kind of viewers or readers, because there's the marketplace, the book marketplace is so saturated, and there are so many books. You know, even if your books are good and interesting, chances are very slim that people will even see it and recognize it, because they're just flooded with titles and interesting books and themes. So I'm gonna turn the heater off. So that kind of discourages me, you know, in general, from writing, or even sometimes paralyzes me actually, even from doing anything, because I feel like, what am I doing this for? You know, if there's no audience, whom am I communicating with then? I'm communicating with the wall, basically. Yeah. So it's very difficult, and my my stuff, my books, my themes, my images, none of this hits the nerve with a wider audience. So it is neither super scary, it is not violent, it doesn't contain sex. Although I tested that a couple of times, you know, I put it to the test to see if I make it a little bit more sexual. Let's see if I get more views. I probably did. So, you know, I have one video, we need more petting, and I showed my ass in a male underwear. I only wear men's underwear from Walmart, because, you know, those what's the brand name? I don't know, Hanes or something, and I forgot the other name. So, but yeah, they're very, or Fruit of the Loom, you know. So, or this, you know, the sock company, I forgot the name. But anyway, so I wear these really comfy men's jersey cotton underpants, because, you know, the ones with the leg on it, because they're just very comfortable, they're warm. I tend to get bladder infections, and they're just very comfortable, you know. The women's panties, they kind of cut into my thighs, and it just doesn't, they usually don't feel very comfortable. So yeah, so I have a photo with the only sexy underwear I have, which is men's boxer briefs, and I made it. I filmed it. I photographed it kind of like from the side, where you see my thighs, and then the title. I just was playing around with it, and I saw, yeah, interesting. It was like I have over 2,000 views on it. So while my other videos have like 10 views on it. So just, you know, sometimes I test these things to see. I also played around and tested like a scientist sometimes. I tested different channels with different photos and different names to see people's reactions to it, particularly in chat rooms, to see how people react to this when I say exactly the same things that I always say. And I saw a huge difference when I have had my dog Kenny, the photo of him, and the name Kenny Redwood Forest or something. I had the channel, that's a dormant channel now. So, and then in chat rooms, I noticed, or in general, talking to people, commenting and stuff like this, I noticed that people weren't paying very much attention to me, even if I said something rather, I wouldn't say provocative, but something politically triggering, let's put it that way. And the same politically triggering things or politically incorrect things, you know, that I said with that channel didn't get very much attention. But when I had when I had my own photo showing it did get attention. So I showed myself unsexy, and it did get more attention, not for the sexy factor, but it got attention insofar that how dare a woman says something like this? Like I'm testing, so I'm testing the atmosphere out there, how people are still thinking to this day, and they are massively sexist, massively. The vast majority of men are massively sexist, and a lot of women playing into this, catering to it, giving it more ammunition. So pitching into that negative cycle, and they don't know, they're not aware of it, not aware at all. They are so locked into wanting to be desired, wanting to be loved, wanting to be liked. A lot of women, they confuse this being desired with being loved. They think when they're being desired, they're automatically being loved, which couldn't be farther from the truth, of course. So, matter of fact, it's often the opposite, particularly in Christian men will actually, and I saw it with Muslim men, it's the exact same thing. There's no difference, just the Muslims are more violent, okay? So, but it's the exact same material and the same energy. It's just one is just way out of proportion, way more than the other. So, but the energy is just as toxic, and people don't understand, they don't realize it. The ego latches onto religion. The ego loves religion because the ego can use that religion as its identity. So, because they feel like they have no other identity, there's nothing going on underneath. So that's why I am trying to offer to the world, hey, you are infinitely more important than your religion or bank account or nationality. Okay, you are a living being, just like a dog, just like a wolf or a horse or a rabbit or any other living being. Just we're made out of the same materials, and we're all equally precious. Okay? And we're very precious. And I tried to talk to my brother about this last night. Obviously, there are vast differences among us. Why do we want to deny that? Some people want to deny that because they are terrified. They don't even want to go in that direction. They are so terrified that they would be labeled something, or that they would be labeled stupid or racist or whatever, and they would be shunned from society. But we need to look at the facts. Muslims are violent. It's a fact, okay? That's not racist. That's just looking at the facts. And if the Germans had been looking at the facts, then this one German lady would not have gone over there to the Middle East. I don't know where she went, somewhere out there, Afghanistan or something, to meet her boyfriend, whom she met on the internet, who sweet-talked her, who groomed her into coming there. And then they gang raped her and almost killed her, and then she was arrested by that government and then executed for having been associated with ISIS. So, because they go against each other. So, and that's like a 16-year-old child, okay? So, she doesn't know better. She's thrown into this world in Germany where everyone is terrified of ever even addressing the facts. Okay? Her life could have been saved if people had addressed the facts, if they had not been so terrified of being labeled something by society, of being shunned by the social group, their peer groups and so on. Yeah. They're terrified. I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about because I'm from Germany and my family is German. And I see everyone there. I see how these people are thinking and feeling. And it's very unconscious. And the more unconscious it is, the worse it gets. Okay, they're absolutely terrified of being labeled racist or fascist or bigoted or stupid, low class. That's probably that's the common denominator in all of this. It's like the fear of being labeled low class, particularly in a society that I was growing up in. You know, the academic world. They are absolutely petrified of this possibility of their peer groups looking down on them and thinking that they're sort of like trailer trash or deplorable or outcast or stupid or just low class. Low class is like, whew, that's the L word. No, we don't want to go in that direction. So it's very serious. It's very serious. Then we have other societies where being labeled gay is the worst thing that can happen to them. So then there are societies where, I don't know, they could be labeled bigot is the worst thing, or I don't know. Different societies with different stigmata. But those are the main ones, you know, the European society in general. I'm combing this all over into this one drawer right now. There are very different people living there, of course. But I'm talking now about the demographic of white European, the native Europeans who have evolved there over thousands of years, and who have experienced certain things like Second World War. They have experienced Adolf Hitler, you know, and so after Hitler had committed suicide and his girlfriend, then okay, they tried to establish themselves again, sort of. And then, of course, that was a huge trauma, you know, initially. Then they were all afraid. They didn't ever want this to happen again. Never, 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 ever. Never they go there anywhere, okay? Then the next generation, okay, of people, so they had that already. It already came with the DNA and with the baby milk and so on, and the environment, and so that became a taboo. And then the next generation after that, it became a stigmata to be in any ways associated with anything right-wing or nationalistic or bigoted in any way, or be, you know, racist in any way, or prejudiced in any way. So yeah, and then it became the stigmata of being labeled stupid and trailer trash and not belonging into that high society that prides itself actually with being humble. The snake bites itself in the tail. This is an oxymoron, you know. We are so humble, and they are proud while they say it. No, that's not humble. Okay, we're so understated. We are like the whatever, you know, the old rich aristocracy from England. You know, we have our butlers drive our Mercedes Benzes or Jaguars first to drive, to ride in the seats a little bit so that we can be understated. And in the meantime, they are super mega proud of all of this. So there it is. That's unconsciousness. That's what I'm talking about. It's like, it's, they're so unconscious, and when things are unconscious and they are actually trying to fight against something, as in I'm humble, I'm so humble, you know, like wanting to fight this pride, then the pride takes over and nips itself in the butt and says, hey, the whole time you've been full of pride. And they don't even notice it, they don't even realize it. There's nothing real about them. And that is also what a lot of black people are picking up in white liberals. And that's what they are calling. That's why they call that, you are playing white, you're acting white. So what does that mean? You know, acting white. Obviously, they're acting very neurotic, but that doesn't make the other people less neurotic. We're all neurotic. We all just have our own personal neurotic niche. You know, we have our own story, we have our own brainwashing, we have a collective unempowerment that has been drilled into us in every society. Okay, and then we keep that going, you know, with those kind of things, and with those kind of ideas that we keep grooming, you know, and riding deeper into the groove. So like, but everything also has an origin. It starts somewhere. So one person's neurosis then starts to edge on the other person's neurosis, and in the process they don't understand each other at all. There's no more understanding going on. They don't know where this person came from. They don't know where he came from or she came from emotionally. What's going on here, you know? They don't know what their behavior suddenly triggered in the other person. But I see it, if you stand above all of this on the tower, then you can see where everything is. You know, I can clearly trace it back and see what's going on. You know, a certain trauma from generations ago, they keep themselves perpetuated. They be in the course of its development from generation to generation becomes something else. It has nothing to do anymore with the original thing, but it becomes something that is like a collective psychosis or something. And it can happen very quickly. And then it lost touch with where it actually started. And people have no idea why they act the way they do and why they have such hatred towards this or that group of people or whatever group it is. You know. So I'm just trying to bring consciousness back into this and try to explain to people, you know, stop doing the collective unempowerment. You're not unempowered. You're very powerful, every one of you, whoever you are. And we're all equally precious. Okay? Our bodies, they're all equally precious. The dog's body, the horse's body, your body, the other person's body. So, and brains, the brain cells, people's brain cells, they don't want to go out and hunt deer. People with their brainwashing, this should be called brain dirtying, really. The people with their perpetuated religious upbringing and with the repetitive mantras, the repetitive anti-education, the threats from the parents, the 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 labeling, the fear of being called sissy or gay, and the dad making sure that the child is terrified of being labeled that. And even Terence McKenna, that the old hippie man Terence McKenna, who has died a couple of years ago from a brain stroke. I like listening to him because he has a very pleasant voice. But I was very saddened and shocked to hear him talk about his teenage years, when even hippie Terence McKenna, as a 13-year-old boy somewhere out there in the Bible Belt, growing up with hunter father and so on, and the father said, you need to shoot a moose so that you're being initiated into adulthood, so you become a man. So, well, of course Terence McKenna talked about it in a sad way, and in a way of criticizing it, because he realizes today that that was total bullshit and it was awful. It was horrific. So father made his teenage boy shoot a moose. Horrific thing to live with for the rest of your life. Moose are gorgeous, beautiful, amazing, majestic animals. Don't kill those. So what's happening here in the United States? Those people they're drilled into this. They're peer pressured into it. They're frightened into it because they're so busy with their fear of being looked down on as sissy or gay by their peer group, that they don't even recognize what they're doing, that they're killing these innocent, majestic, amazing beings. Makes me so infinitely sad. That's why I make these videos. I'm trying to bring awareness to the world about this. Okay, I'm trying to get you to look at it. Look in the mirror, look at it, and see how insane and idiotic that is. That doesn't make anyone more manly. Not at all. Quite the opposite. It makes people look like they're pushovers and peons and poop-ons by their society, that they can't even stand up against it and say, I would never kill an animal, and I don't care if anyone calls me gay or this or that. That's what I want that's what I want boys to say to their parents. I don't care what you think of me. That's what I want you boys to say. So what matters is love. That has nothing to do with masculine or feminine. Love is a universal truth, okay? And that applies to all of us, all of our bodies and brain cells. People who kill another living being, they're killing themselves. It's like a mental suicide. And it has its toll through the course of their lives. It will nag unconsciously, and then they'll push it away even further, and they will go even more in the direction of their dad and so on. Because the pain is pushing, and the pain of having killed will be pressing. And people who are unconscious and who don't have compassion, they have buried that compassion, they will push against it even further. But pain will still be pushing. And the truth is always pushing. The truth is always like a raging river. It will flow, and it will flow you down eventually. It's better to flow with it, to swim with it, right away, not to push it away, not to stem against it, not to be in resistance to it. That's very important for your own good. I'm saying this for your own good, for your own well-being. Yeah, it does hurt. It does hurt to be rejected and so on, but it hurts much more to go against one's own body, against your own cells, which you do if you kill someone, if you kill an animal or person, you are violating your own body cells, because that's a huge energetic violation. Because your body cells and brain cells, they don't want to hurt anyone. It's the ego, the ego that is that unconscious part, that unconscious entity almost, if I want to call it, becomes an energetic entity. And it takes over, and it is driven by fear. It's always driven by fear. So my message to the world is stand strong. Stand your ground. Whoever you are, it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what gender you are, and in which society you live. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how grooved in your society's so-called traditions are, or customs, or whatever. Have the strength to tune into universal truth, which is love and compassion, and say no to violence, whatever the violence looks like, wherever it comes from. Say no to it. And that is my message to the world. And it feels good to talk to my tablet. It feels good to talk to Drew. Feels good to have friends. Feels good to be understood by someone, and to exchange feelings and thoughts, because that can be a lifesaver for some people, to know that there is someone who understands you. There are so many questions in my head in regards to society, so many questions. Why are people so violent? Why are they seeking violence? Why are Donald Trump's sons seeking violence? Or why have they killed the animals in Africa? Donald Trump never did it. He would never kill an animal in Africa. Why did his sons do this? Is it genetics? Did they inherit that from the mother? It's just a question. I don't know. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they did. Where does it come from? My husband says it's all genetics. They don't have a compassion center in the brain. So Dr. Adrian Rain is trying to dig deeper into this. He's a neuroscientist, and he put violent criminals into an fMRI machine, which he has in a cargo van, which he's traveling around with from prison to prison, putting people into this machine to find out. And so what he found out in violent criminals is what they all have in common, is a very low resting heart rate. Where's that coming from? and genetic, and undersized amygdala in the brain. People with Williams syndrome, which is actually it's a disorder, but people with Williams syndrome, it's one genetic defect actually, because they're not very functioning, not highly functioning. But they have one thing that is superior to other people. They have very enlarged amygdala. They found that. So that's why they think the amygdala have at least a lot to do, if not a whole lot to do with compassion. So it's not only the amygdala, but that apparently plays a very large role in compassion, in the ability to feel compassion for another living being. People with Williams syndrome they have a lot of compassion. Okay, so there's a girl, and her name is Nicole 123 or something, and that's her. She sings, and she has Williams syndrome, and they sing a lot, the people with Williams, and you can clearly see that she has huge compassion, huge. And they're different, they're not all exactly the same, but they have common things. So they're very musical, and there's even one singer, professional singer, who has Williams syndrome. So there's a difference in intelligence among them. So some of them have very low IQ and rational cognitive abilities, but they're all very tuned in and tapped into the infinite cosmos. And then there are normal people also who have large amygdala, and they find out that they have a lot of compassion. So there's a common thing going on there, and so the amygdala play a huge role in this, and also some other areas as the hippocampus and the corpus callosum as well in the brain. So they're just at the beginning now of trying to find which brain region plays a role in these different abilities and tendencies and so on. Dr. Robert Sapolsky said ultimately we don't have much of a freedom of choice, or freedom of or freedom range of choice making and authority over our legislative ability over our predicament of the way we behave. So ultimately it is all governed by our genetic predisposition and how our brain anatomy is formed, and what kind of hormones and chemicals we release. So it has to do with that. But I personally do see that there is a certain range. There is a certain range of choice making, and there is a certain gap, maybe, in that, where a certain radius, at least, in which we can become more aware. We can become more conscious, and then when we become more conscious over our own actions, we can see how we are behaving. Jiddu Krishnamurti said that if the observer is the observed, as in me being governed by my brain chemicals that are released in a specific brain anatomy, trying to observe myself. I am the observer and I'm also the observed in that moment. And that makes it very problematic in terms of having freedom of decision making and freedom of legislation over how I am going to proceed with my life. Sort of. It does create a problem, but it does not completely exclude some freedom. So there is still some freedom range left. And I think we can widen that freedom range. We can widen as we become more conscious. Because I have observed that in myself. I have become more conscious. And the more conscious you become, the more you practice being the observer of yourself, who is the observed, then the more of a freedom of choice-making range you develop.
Okay, your pasta is done.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Come down and get it?
Yes, I'm coming down. Okay. All right, my husband made me pasta. So it was good to talk to you. See you later. Take care. Bye-bye.